Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us here on the ice, here on Amateur Sports TV. Today's guest, as you can probably see in the upper corner, we have a fantastic individual who knows more about hockey than I do, probably, both the male and the female game. She has represented St. Vital very well in her younger days and our nation tremendously in her career as a goaltender here, representing Winnipeg, representing Canada, and now an author out of Mississauga, Ontario, where she resides. Sami Jo Small and the Role I Played. We're going to talk about her book as well as the raw stories that are inside it. Truly a great read and something you'll want to check out. Certainly I enjoy reading it because I'm amazed at how she's able to recall all of those wonderful stories. So we'll get to talk about her before and after and what she's up to now. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sami Jo Small. Joining me now, Sami Jo Small. Sami, thank you for taking some time today. How are we doing today in Ontario?
Well, thanks for having me on, Theo. I really appreciate it. We're doing well. My daughter is at school right now, and she had a little bit of a runny nose a couple days ago. So she's cleared that, and she's back at school. So very excited.
Speaking of which, how interesting is it now going back to school with the current situation we're in? Was it something you were hesitant on? Did you know she wanted to go back to school? And I know she's probably missing her friends the most, right?
Right. Yeah, it was obviously I think for every parent across this country, a really tough decision. She's only 4, but she's an SK. So we have 2 full years of kindergarten here in Ontario. So she's gone to a full year already. But with the amount of time that they've been off from the pandemic, that's a lifetime for her. So yeah, she misses her friends, but she doesn't really remember them. I mean, it's not like it's a huge thing. And during the pandemic, we have taken in her cousin, who's also 4 years old. And so I think it was hard for her to sort of step away from the constant play every single day back into the real school environment. But we thought it was important to just kind of see, and yeah, kind of hope for the best. She's in a Francophone school that she goes on a bus to. So the thing that had me most worried was the bus, but they seem to all be taking the precautions and doing the best they can, which that's all you can ask for. And yeah, now she's made new friends and she seems to be excited. So
that's awesome. That's great to hear. I know my little guy's 8, and the first thing he missed most was his friends. So yeah, I can totally understand that. As a 4-year-old, you probably had 2 years of skating under your belt already, Sami, according to your book. Is that still true? You're holding on to that story?
Yeah, so my parents themselves didn't really skate. So they took skating lessons. And what they did is they put us, my brother and I, who's 3 years older than I am, in skating lessons at the same time. And we were kind of at the other end of the rink as they were learning it. So it was a real kind of family affair. So by no means were my parents the super aggressive, crazy hockey parents that put us in to skate at 5. It was more of a, they thought it was important we learn how to swim and skate and sort of do all the things that children should know how to do and be exposed to. So yes, we had skating lessons, and I used to skate all the time at the pond down at St. Vital Park. That was sort of where we would go as a family. And the first time that I kind of learned how to skate, my parents had bought me a helmet, but they didn't buy me a cage, and I didn't really know how to skate. So anyways, one of the first times down at St. Vital Park, I ended up on my face planted, and there just blood everywhere. And after that, they bought me a cage. So
So the cage, then the pads, then the blocker and the glove came shortly thereafter.
Well, I tried to be the goaltender right from the get-go, but they didn't want any part of that. So I skated as a forward actually until the age of 9 years old, although I played a lot of goalie in floor hockey and in street hockey with my brother and his friends and stuff. So I desperately wanted to be the goaltender, but they didn't really want to buy the equipment. So I had my brother's used equipment initially as a forward, and then graduated into the community center equipment that was available at Norberry when I became a goaltender.
It's funny you mentioned Norberry because that's the alma mater to my son's community club beginnings, because it's literally across the street from where we grew up.
no way. That's awesome.
And Norberry, the Golden Knights colors, and
Yeah.
coaching and hanging out there at the community center. Probably a little different now. The old outdoor rinks are still there, but I mean, nonetheless, when I saw Norberry in the book, I was like, wow, that's like right next door to where we're at. So this is going to be cool.
Well, and I went to school there too. So it was a school back in the day. École Norberry, which is now the division offices, I think. So we didn't. It was also my school. So that's why we got to play like kind of right across the street from it.
So you played as a player up until you were 9. You then made the move into playing as a goaltender. How did you convince your dad that you wanted to play between the pipes?
So we kind of had this family tradition, and that my brother had tried it when he was 9 years old. So I knew that when I became 9, I was going to be allowed to try it. And there wasn't really much convincing. I think that they didn't think it was going to stick. So with my brother, it didn't stick, and he ended up being the angry goalie that would let pucks in. But when I just knew that it was going to be for me. I just loved the gear. I loved everything about watching the goalies on Hockey Night in Canada. And I just felt like a warrior out there. So it was, my parents were very supportive of whatever my brother and I wanted to do. They were not hockey people, and they were all about exposing us to various different activities. And so I think goaltending to them was probably just another activity that Sammy's going to try. But it stuck with me, and I wanted to continue. And it was good that I did, because playing boys hockey, really the only option that I had at the time in Winnipeg, it meant that as the guys grew, I could still play alongside them and not have to worry about 6'5" guy in the corner and hitting and contact and everything. I could just worry about that 6-ounce rubber puck and have to stop that. So it allowed me, I think, to play at a higher level than perhaps I would have otherwise.
Playing against the boys at a younger age, obviously female hockey didn't have enough participants to have their own league. Now we're seeing, junior women's hockey. We're starting to see professional hockey for female, which is great. What was it like? I had 1 year where I had one female on my team, so I wasn't really exposed to it that much. But being the female in that room, you talk about being privy to certain conversations, but how were you able to prepare AA hockey and through those ranks, knowing that your team of boys were, basically, looking at you to stop every piece of black rubber between 6x4 net?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, there was women's teams prior to me, and the mayor of Mississauga, Hazel McCallion, she actually played professional hockey in Montreal during the war, and it was very acceptable for girls to play really through the 50s and 60s. And then sort of a new era of attitudes, I guess I want to say, came into play. And women's hockey was really stifled in a lot of parts of this country. It's continued to play in Ontario. But in Manitoba, there was actually, at Norberry Community Center, there was women's teams in the 60s, which I was really interested to find out, which is really so cool. And then there was nothing. And they invented ringette so that girls could play a different form of hockey and not be exposed to perhaps all of the violence, the perceived violence in hockey. And not to say that ringette hasn't grown into its own amazing sport, but it was put in place to not allow girls to play hockey. And so I think, for most of my peers, most of the girls that I went to school with, most of the ones that I was friends with, they were never allowed to play. That wasn't part of what their parents allowed them to do. Little girls were not supposed to be on the ice. But I was fortunate enough to have 2 supportive parents that allowed me to play and encouraged me to play. And whenever I joined the team, I think the boys were hesitant initially. But soon just kind of treated me like a sister on the team. And I'm really proud of those guys, because it probably wasn't easy for them. And for any of them at any point, if one guy had just been super malicious to me, I'm sure it would have turned me off hockey and I probably would have quit. But I didn't have that. I heard the odd comment and stuff, but it wasn't anything that the guys on my team didn't defend me towards. So It's awesome to see so many of the guys that I played with now coaching their daughters play hockey or involved in women's sport. It just is, it's really come full circle. And to know that I played a small part in changing some of those attitudes also. It was often more the parents of players that I was competing against that didn't want a girl on the ice, but my teammates were always my fiercest supporters. So I was pretty fortunate growing up.
I would say that that's probably the best answer I've heard about that topic, because you've lived it, you've played it, Sammy, and it's great to hear it from your perspective, because, I mean, sure, you've seen it in the 80s, you see it growing up, but now there's that, you know, the fact that there are great women and great men teaching female hockey and sport in general, that volunteerism is still so highly important in all amateur sports. I mean, when your daughter probably gets old enough, she'll be playing hockey, or she'll be skating, I think, right? And you'll want to be on the ice.
He hates it right now, so we'll see.
Perfect. But like you said, it's you had the fiercest camaraderie amongst your teammates, and you had that support no matter what, which is truly amazing.
Well,
did you ever have a time or an adversity where your team just didn't feel like they were going to support you, or did you? How was that explained from a coach's perspective, being a young hockey player with a room of a bunch of boys and you're the only girl?
It was never really explained. I don't know. It was just that I was able to be a part of the team. You know, I tried out like everybody else. I was in the dressing room like everybody else. And I'm sure for a lot of guys it was weird. It was different. But that was never verbalized in front of me. You know, I would get strange looks for sure. And guys might say to another guy coming into the restroom for the first time, like, there's a girl in here, so you have to go to the bathroom to change. But it doesn't really make it any different. And I think what, you know, hockey culture itself, the problems that I see within society around hockey culture are because there aren't enough, there isn't enough diversity. There isn't enough different thoughts in the dressing room. So by me being in there, that just kind of changed perhaps the way that they talked. You know, it gave them the ability to maybe say things they might not have said prior, and to connect with me on a different level. So I think it brings out the best in people when there's diverse thought backgrounds that people bring to a team. And that's what I think makes team sports so amazing, is that lots of these people you'd never be friends with in a normal walk of life, but you put these people on a team and they're your teammates for life. I mean, they're your friends for life. And that's what's so incredible to see. And that's why I say I'm so proud of those guys, because it could have been very different for me. And it was very different for so many of my peers. And I understand that. And I don't think that they get enough credit for sort of that unknowing support that they just showed me just by showing me kindness.
That's awesome. You talk about building those relationships in the locker room and on the ice that you would not normally do in real life or in outdoor life outside of the hockey rink. Did you ever have to give advice or dating advice to any of the boys when you were growing up, or was it not really discussed? It's more about focusing on the game and getting the W?
I mean, I think the guys learned to treat women with more respect around me than they might have prior to me being there. I hope that I provided them a basis for their relationships moving forward, so that they could see women as peers. And so I by no means was I the one giving dating advice. But I certainly, by just me being present, I think probably changed some of their actions and the way that they treated their partners moving forward. So yeah, I certainly was privy to a lot more conversations, knowing, you know, both sides of the equation. But I took my situation and tried to make the most of it for the guys.
How were you able to maintain your edge of excellence, your number one priority to be the best goaltender, not in just Manitoba, but looking into those adolescent years? How were you able to maintain your edge, knowing you had a goal after high school?
Well, I never did have a goal after high school. So it was not a Team Canada sport. It was not an Olympic sport. So
At the time, it wasn't. No, right.
yeah. So I dreamt of playing in the NHL when I was little,
Yeah.
like most of my teammates. And, I soon realized that that probably wasn't going to be a possibility for me. So I played a ton of different sports. But I think what was coached into me, or perhaps taught to me by my parents, was that you always try. And so no matter what you're doing, you always try. And it wasn't, I didn't go into a Winnipeg Warriors game or a St. Vital Victoria's game thinking I'm going to be seen by the right person, or I'm going to be get to that next level. I went into that game wanting to win the game, every game, and every save I wanted to make that save. And so it was really about focusing on the moment. And I think because I really loved it, I really found joy in sport in general, not just in hockey, but just in sport in general. I think that that's where you improve your skills, and that's where you become, more technically sound, because you're able to do it perhaps longer than others, train harder, train longer, train smarter, whatever it is. I think I was able to do that because I could find the joy within the moments. And so many of the different sports that I played, and I played a ton of different sports. I did have a dream of going to the Olympics, but it was certainly never the Winter Olympics.
We're going to talk about those dreams just after the break here. We're going to have a quick segment called Remember When, as well as we're going to talk to Sammy about her book, The Role I Played. So stay with us. We'll be right back here on the ice. Back with Sami Jo Small. Sammy, you said before the break you played many sports. Was javelin one of your favorite sports?
So, I loved track and field, and javelin was perhaps one of the ones I excelled the most at. But I would say that I had a love for a lot of different sports. I just happened to be probably the best at javelin.
I could never throw that thing. I could throw a discus, but I could never throw a javelin the way everyone else could.
Did you play baseball?
I did.
So that's probably the problem, is it's not like a baseball throw.
No.
It's more, who do really well at javelin is volleyball players. So it's like a spike, or sometimes football quarterbacks, depending on how they've learned to throw. But I had one of my friends who was a pitcher, ended up pitching for the Gold Eyes, and I had him come try javelin because I was like, he's going to be amazing. But he just always threw down from the mound. You're always used to throwing down. You're not throwing way up in the air. So
yeah, I couldn't. The launch was my issue. I could never get it to stick in the ground after.
It's tough. You have to change your whole dynamics, and that's not easy.
If you were playing a sport and you just didn't like it growing up, or you had your mom and your dad try all these sports, if you ever had one you didn't like, what did you say to your mom or dad growing up? Like, I just don't like it, or I'm done with it, or
well, the one that I quit probably the earliest was swimming, and I quit it because it had early morning practices, and I did not like that. So I think I wasn't mature enough to really verbalize it, so I just complained a lot. I complained about waking up early. I hated it. I was cold. I was just, but I actually loved swimming to compete. So I loved the competition of it, but I could not handle waking up before school and just being so cold, jumping into the pool. And so.
Are you a good swimmer now?
So I still do swim. I still use it as training, and ended up playing a lot of high school water polo. So used my swimming to kind of play a team sport eventually.
There we go. As promised, we're going to have a section here. We're going to call this Remember When, where I shoot times in your career perhaps you may or may not recall. So let's see if Sammy can. You're good at recalling things, because if you ever read this, I highly suggest reading this book, because if you want a good read, this is fantastic, because it not only talks about Olympics, but it talks about the ins and outs and all the little stories in between. And I love that about this book, because there's parts of the Olympic protocol I didn't even know that real happened. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But here we go. Your first shutout as a goaltender. Do you remember when that was?
Like as a little kid or with the national team?
First ever shutout.
I don't remember.
Okay. Now, I've read this in the book, and I know how it happened, but do you recall that day when Coach Bennett gave you the call and said, would you like to come to Japan?
For sure. I can still remember it like it was yesterday. I can picture myself at home in California. I was at school at the time, and I'd already been cut from the team. That's why it was so unexpected. So when he called and asked me to join the team, I can still vividly see myself sitting on the futon that my roommate at the time had. It was like a Mexican throw, super colorful, and here I am in the warmth of California sun, accepting this call to join a hockey team in Canada. It was really special and surreal all at the same time.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I love that, how you explain that, sitting in California, and then how you answered the phone and you were like a bit hesitant. You're like, yes, question mark, yes, okay. How does this going to work? Question mark. How did this?
It was serious. You know, you always think your friends are playing practical jokes on you.
There was no caller ID back then, was there?
No, there was nothing. And the phone is attached to the actual phone, so it got thrown off the ledge, and I'm trying to act cool as if this is normal, but this is not normal, and yeah.
Let's talk about your acceptance letter to Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when that happened?
I do, yes. I was, I think, I had applied to a ton of universities. I had a brother that competed collegiately before me. So the fact that I was a javelin thrower and already had a distance, it meant that coaches never had to see me do the sport live. So I always encourage kids into individual sports who are maybe from a smaller area, such as Winnipeg, because when you're in a team sport, you have to fit the mold within the NCAA or even a CIS team or U Sports, I guess now it's called. And perhaps you're not the right year. Perhaps they already have a goaltender or they have a pitcher, whatever your sport might be. But in individual sports, you basically have a distance or a time, and that's all they're looking for. So I had competed at the national junior level. And so I was pleasantly surprised that a lot of these universities were looking for javelin throwers, and primarily because it is banned in a lot of high schools in the States because of its dangerous nature, I guess. It's a big, giant spear being thrown through the air of high school students. So there weren't as many javelin throwers. And so that really was my in to getting the scholarship. And I wasn't really privy to that prior to the application process. So when the Stanford one came back, I had got in, and I guess it didn't really dawn on me just the level of school that Stanford was. I think in Winnipeg, you don't often, for me growing up without social media, there wasn't really sort of that talk about other schools. I know what Harvard and Yale were, but beyond that, they all seemed good to me. I mean, it was just super exciting. But it was my brother, who was at school in Texas, who was just like overwhelmed by the fact that I could possibly get into Stanford and would be offered a scholarship. And so I think through his excitement, that made it just all the more special to me. And my parents were just in disbelief. And I had just been fortunate to not only be a javelin thrower, but be from a small catchment area as well. So Stanford likes to have diverse backgrounds, and we happen to be grouped in with North Dakota. So how many people are applying from North Dakota and Manitoba in a year, So I just feel like all of these things just worked out in my favor, and I was able to be accepted. And it didn't necessarily mean that I was 100% going there, because I still had other recruiting trips. But once I went on a recruiting trip in February in Winnipeg, and arriving and there's palm trees, I was like, I'm coming here for sure.
No doubt. No, Palo Alto is absolutely gorgeous. It's I've been fortunate to live in Los Angeles. And I know exactly what you're talking about. When you get on the West Coast, it's like, how come I didn't know about this place? I've been in Winnipeg way too long.
Not everybody live here, but then you do realize that actually everybody does live here, and that's why living in the Bay Area is so expensive. And there's just so many people. Like in LA, it's just so many people.
Yeah, mechanical engineering.
Mm-hmm.
What made you? Do you remember how you declared that major?
For sure. So I actually started at Stanford in pre-med because I felt like that's kind of what smart people do. And so I sort of pursued that for sort of the first year. And it's at Stanford, you don't have to declare your major till after the second year. So after the first probably year and a half, I volunteered at the local hospital. And in volunteering, I realized that for these doctors, like this was their life. This was their passion. This is what they felt like they were born to do. And I never felt that way. I never felt that way about pursuing medicine. I just felt like this is what I'm supposed to do. And so, I still continued on in it, but I took my first course in mechanical engineering, which brought me into the machine shop where we got to make stuff with our hands. And that was transformative to me because I had always been so enamored with making things and tinkering with things and taking things apart. And now suddenly I could do this as an actual degree. I didn't know what engineers did. I had no idea. So that really opened up my eyes. And initially I just made the transformation into biomechanical engineering, thinking that, I could still do half here and half there, but soon realized that you can't really do that so well. So I made the full transformation into mechanical engineering and into the School of Product Design, which is kind of two segments. There's thermodynamics and then there's product design, which is coming up with products. And I just loved it. It was so much fun.
Awesome. Let's talk about your Olympic career. Would you remember when you won your first gold medal?
Yeah, in Salt Lake City.
Yeah. Remember who you hugged first?
What's that?
Remember who hugged you first?
Who hugged
when everyone got on the ice? Do you remember who celebrated with you first?
So it's actually a lengthy time. Most people don't sort of tune into this because when you're watching the Olympics and the team wins, usually they cut to another sport and you watch and then you see them get their medals in a little bit. Well, it's a lengthy time that you're kind of standing there. And in Nagano, there's time enough for the teams to go to the dressing room. And then, excuse me, you're kind of summoned back. And in Salt Lake City, we just kind of stayed on the ice, but they're doing this setup. And so you're in this melee, you're like euphoric, and then all you want to do is kind of continue your celebration, but they're telling you to stay on the blue line and you're trying to, look in the crowd to see your family. But then you're trying to stay in the moment. And so it's kind of this weird in between zone. You don't have a gold medal yet, but you've won. And so you're just kind of waiting. So initially, this is before, now with Team Canada, they make you line up in your numbers. So every time you see the team, I think probably World Juniors, everybody, they're in their numbers on the blue line. Well, ours was not like that. So we didn't even know where to stand, who to stand next to. I mean, those are the photos that people are taking. It was just such a weird dynamic. So at one point, Haley Wickenheiser, her son Noah came on the ice. So I was just kind of chatting with her and Noah. And then suddenly she's like, Sammy, turn around. And they were coming down the line with our gold medals. So I do remember that sort of moment and thinking, oh yeah, this is real. We're not just winning a provincial championship with our buddies here. They're coming down with the Olympic gold medal.
The second gold medal.
So the second gold medal, unfortunately, I was up in the stands, and I came down for that ceremony into, the excitement of my team, but it wasn't the same excitement. It wasn't, when you're not able to be on the ice with the players, it's a very different feeling. And I talk a lot about that in the book, the raw emotions that go with constantly battling in your mind that you want your team to be successful, but you also secretly hope they can't possibly go on without you. And I think it's a real human emotion that I wanted to convey to people, to acknowledge that that's real and that's all right. It's all right to feel those feelings, but also celebrating other people's success is hugely important. So what I really tried to do in that moment was to really enjoy the other's success without feeling my own, perhaps feeling of hurt or anger or sadness, and to leave that until later. So I can remember being on the ice with the girls, and I was in my jacket and they're in their equipment. So it was, tenderly trying to walk around without getting your feet stepped on, while still congratulating every player and letting them know that they made a difference. And it certainly was a very different experience than my Salt Lake experience.
Absolutely. Let's take one more quick break and we'll come back and let's talk about this book, because there's lots of good things in it. We'll be right back here on the ice. Okay, Sammy, we can't wait any much. The role I played. How did you come up with that title?
So it initially was not the name of the book. So I started the book about 10 years ago, and my working title for the book was actually It's Not About the Medal. And I work as a professional speaker, so I give a lot of keynote addresses to corporations or associations, and that's the name of my speech. And so I just thought it transferred well into the book. But at the time, Lance Armstrong's book was called It's Not About the Bike. And people were hesitant to have me call my book It's Not About the Medal. So while I think I was really stuck with that title, I really liked it because I felt like it really captured what the whole message was about. And so my mantra during my presentations is that we don't always get to choose the role we play, but we always get to choose how we play it. And so I kind of put this as sort of a stopgap until I figured out what the real title was going to be, and continued to write. And then once I sold it to a publisher, was talking to my editor, and he actually loved it. He's like, this seems like this would be a perfect title. I was like, I don't know. I'm not really stuck on it. And but it seems to have really resonated with people, and others seem to really like it. So it's growing on me for sure, but I still am stuck on that one 10 years ago.
You still like the old title?
I do, and nobody knows who Lance Armstrong is anymore. So
no, he's just he's just a washed-up bike guy or whatever.
There you go.
You have a couple of different quotes here, and I want to talk about one. In the end, hockey gave me the greatest reward of all. You never say what that reward is, though, or do you?
Yeah. Do you have the next line after that? The next line.
I do not. No.
The hockey gave me the greatest reward, and that was finding play, and simply being able to play. That's, not everybody around this world is fortunate to be able to do that. And I know that as Canadians, we sometimes get wrapped up in what hockey means to the country, but the reality is that we get to play. We get to just play this game and enjoy ourselves, and that's what I'm just so fortunate that I got to do.
The encouragement of play, like that came from your mom and dad, right from the heart, and having a brother that wanted you to try everything and see if you liked it or not. I think that's
for sure. Yeah,
that message.
Asked me if I meant for the dedication to say thank you to my mom and dad for encouraging the play.
That was my next question. I mean,
there you go. And I said back, no, it wasn't about any one particular play. It was just encouraging play. And that, I think, is maybe the greatest gift that they have given me, is that I now can share that with my daughter, in that she doesn't like any of the things that I like. She's her own self. She loves playing mermaid, unicorn, princess for the 50th time. But what I really try to do is just encourage her in that play. Encourage, ask for one more time, ask her to more about the story, more about the play. Because that's my parents. They were not necessarily hockey people, but they could just see the joy that I had playing the sport and playing sports in general. And so they were the taxi service they volunteered for teams. My dad coached me in soccer and hockey and swimming, even though prior to that, he didn't know much about those sports, but he took his levels in coaching. And my mom was a treasurer on a bunch of the different teams, and often was behind the scenes. And so that knowledge of service too is something that they really passed on to me, and to really appreciate when you do get to just play.
Exactly. Yeah. Kids these days need to be encouraged just to play. I think that's the best part about the whole book, is not particular play, but play.
Play. Yeah, just play.
Just play. Just have fun. Go and see what you like.
Yeah,
like
and it's not about learning a lesson. It's not about, the end result. It's not about the reward. It's just about the actual play.
Which part of the book did you enjoy writing most? And I say part one, part two, part three, or part four?
I would say they were all very different, for sure. There wasn't one that stood out more to me than others. I certainly enjoyed much more writing about the games where I played and I won than me getting pulled or maybe not playing. I didn't enjoy writing those as much, and I would get angry after writing them for the rest of the day. If I had been cut writing that morning and wrote about it, the whole rest of the day, I felt like that angst still, and it, could have been 20, 30 years ago, and I still was feeling it. So putting myself in the moment really made it real and raw and new for me again. So I didn't enjoy those moments as much, but I think it was just as important to be present in those moments as it was for the exciting ones. And, the exciting ones, I would win a world championship, for instance, and be the top goaltender, and I would take my husband out for dinner and we'd celebrate. But fully would be 20 years later. So
right.
Capturing some of those moments again was really nice. And the other ones were very cathartic, going through it and really realizing the impact that you did have, whether it be big or small. Every little bit makes a difference.
I enjoy the common theme of the book when you talk about play as being one, but fulfilling the role that you have in front of you. Whether if you have a choice to always accept it or not, but if you accept it, doing the best you can at that particular position at that particular time. Mm-hmm. Is that a lesson that, young kids, participants in anything can truly follow through with for the rest of their life? Because chances are adversity is going to show up in everyone's life one way or another. It's how you accept it or how you don't accept it, but how you fulfill your next role.
Yeah, I think it's an important message, for everyone, not just young children, but I think it's important for all of us to acknowledge, whether it's in your workplace environment or maybe in your family structure, whatever, that we're all not given the roles we want at all times. And to acknowledge that sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's difficult. We're dealt hands that are not fair and that we don't want to be in, but that ultimately it does matter how you play your role. It matters to everybody around you. It matters to the success of the team, the community, the family. And I think having gone through and played all those roles in my life has given me empathy to have the ability and perspective to look around and see what others are going through. Had I not gone through a lot of those moments, I might not have had that perspective. And so, some days you're on top and some days you're not. And every single person matters to the whole. And I think that you can lead from the front and you can lead from behind, but it's the knowledge that this is most people's lives. This is what we go through on a daily basis. And it's really taught me a lot about being a mother, because it's not about the reward. You seldom get a pat on the back for doing a good job, but it does matter. Every day matters as a parent. And that's one of the big lessons that I think I learned, that I try to evoke through this book so that others can feel that as well and see themselves in those moments and realize that we all go through the same moments, whether we're Olympic athletes or we're not. It's really the human experience.
Do you feel like a pioneer in your sport? And on your sport, I mean hockey. Because
I don't. Who I really think are the pioneers are the ones that played before me that didn't get to play. And, they might have played for 3 or 4 years. They might have had to fight legal battles. They might have, I didn't have to do that. I got to play. And so, I look at somebody like Susie Ewan, who was one of my role models and mentors from Winnipeg, and she didn't start playing hockey till she was 18. because there was no team. So when the University of Manitoba Bisons had a team, she joined the team, and she had skated prior, but played with her brothers, but never actually played on her own team. So those are the ones that I really see as pioneers, because they allowed the framework for all of the rest of us to then follow in their footsteps. And so while others, I think, might call my generation of women pioneers, I think really what we are the first ones that were able to play hockey. And so I don't think our struggles are even close to comparison to the generation before us and before them as well. I look at my mom, who probably could have been a really great athlete, but that wasn't what women did. They didn't play sports, So those are the true pioneers that then put their daughters into sport and fought for them to play.
Interesting point of view. I like that. I like that a lot. I also like how, when I speak to other Team Canada hockey players, the battle between yourselves and the United States, especially at the Olympic and world level, being the powers that the two teams were. How much fun was it to see on the other side playing the red, white, and blue, and knowing it was for a world dominance?
Well, certainly those games were elevated to the highest level. Like, they were such a mirror image of us. They were always so good, and the games are always so close. People always ask me if we hate the Americans. And, when I joined the team initially, most of the girls didn't know any of the Americans. But then gradually, as NCAA sport started and our girls started to go to school with them, and they started to come play club hockey in Canada, we got to know them on a much different level. So there wasn't really the hatred, except for when they pulled on the jersey and then you so badly wanted to win. You wanted to prove that your training was stronger than their training. You wanted to be in that one moment, in that one game, to be on top of the world. And so I think the reason that the two countries have continued to elevate their game is because of these games. Every single time that, even nowadays, the girls step on the ice, it's fight to the death right until the end of the game. And it's just so exciting to see. And it, I think, has made both countries stronger and allowed us to both stay on top of really the world in female hockey.
What's more important, Sammy, to you, the World Championship golds, the Olympic golds, or seeing the sport grow and be participated more globally?
Well, I think it is growing and participating more globally. I get asked all the time, why is there only two countries that are dominant? But that's not the reality. The reality is that there are pro leagues happening in Sweden, Finland, Switzerland, Hungary, Germany. Women are being paid full time to play hockey, which is amazing to see. And like the Slovakian team that lost 14-0 to Canada at the Vancouver Olympics probably would have beaten our 2002 Olympic team that won the gold medal. So every other country is getting stronger, but it also means that we have to get stronger and that Team Canada has to innovate and has to improve. And, I talk about the machine in the book about Hockey Canada being a machine, and we're all just kind of cogs in that progress. And it's so true, because we all have a small part to play, but continuously it has to move forward, and it has to keep, and USA Hockey is the same. And so the fact that every other country has improved so dramatically means that so too does Hockey Canada and Hockey USA. So I think that I have seen world hockey grow, and I have so many of my friends that have played overseas. I played over in Switzerland, and it's amazing, just amazing to see. And so does, one mean more than the other? No, I don't think any one moment really means more than another moment. It just is, it really is, it's not about the rewards at the end, as I mentioned in the book. It's about the moments in between and the people we meet along the way and the friendships you make and the adventures you get to take with those amazing people.
You mentioned that you talk about the journey, like each chronological segment of the book describes a part of the journey. You're able to recall so many stories, Sami Jo, and that's the thing that impressed me the most. And I'm, like your relationship with Jennifer Botterill, excites me because not only are you both Winnipeggers, but you began together basically. You went to Japan together. You were in California together. Mm-hmm. For a little bit before you were playing in San Jose. I think you were practicing in San Jose in '98 before they went to the Olympics, right? Mm-hmm. And there's that story that you're talking about going up and down the coast Do you have enough time to go here? Do you have enough time to go there? Like, it's California. Like, that's crazy. Like, it's so surreal at the time. I also like Princess. When you talk about Princess,
Oh yeah.
that was I'm trying to remember which player that was.
Judy Didick had got a little figurine from McDonald's, really, that became her little mascot that she took everywhere and took pictures with, and Princess made it into the team photo.
There you go. So she did. Okay, perfect, good.
Yeah.
I'm going to mention a phrase to you. Let me know if you agree. I don't think you talk about practice a little bit. You talk about how good you become and how you have to progress. When you talk about, I'm going to make this several different layers now. I'm going to really confuse you. You talked about Hockey Canada being a cog, or you being a cog in that machine. Is the machine getting worn down, or is it still evolving? And I say that because I say that because I look at hockey, and I look at hockey today compared to not just dominance, and how Olympic teams and Canadian teams are put together, but I look at World Junior, how World Junior teams are put together, and it's not the same. Or how you have a select group of kids and there's only a select participant group that could still possibly make the team from the outside. Do you think it's a model that still can be continued to work towards and evolving, or does something have to change?
Well, I think that it's evolving, and I think that Hockey Canada is doing their best to change with the changing landscape of Canada. But ultimately, it is not just about hockey. It's about sport in this country. And if a kid, here in Mississauga would rather play cricket than hockey, that's okay. It's putting the money into where the kids are playing and encouraging kids to stay fit and active. It's not necessarily about forcing them into the game. It's exposing them to the various different avenues. And hockey can be quite expensive across the country and precludes a lot of kids from being able to play. So I think what Hockey Canada is attempting to do is make it so that it is available to the masses. And Tom Rennie, who's the president and CEO currently, is really trying to figure out how to make that work. And I don't know that there necessarily is a solution. But I think when you partner with other sports, it's huge, because you never know what a kid can become. I mean, in Canada, they become hockey players, but who knows? We could have had amazing fencers along the way and never known it. So I want kids to be able to be exposed to so many different sports and have the opportunity to find out what is their passion. And, it might be hockey, but it might be something else as well. So it, I think, continues to evolve and grow, and it will always have a place within the fabric, but I think that place might change as our changing landscape changes as well. And, the game itself might change as more people are exposed to it as well, which I think is exciting and means that hockey can be more inclusive, more accepting. It still has a sort of a ways to go, but it takes the people within the game to really encourage that and change that.
What's Sami Jo Small up to now?
Well, I'm a parent to a 4-year-old in kindergarten, and my husband plays sledge hockey for Team Canada. So he's vying for his 6th Paralympic Games in Beijing. So supporting him on his journey and getting to be a fan is very exciting. And then I work full-time as a professional speaker. So obviously with the pandemic, a lot of people are not having events. They've turned virtual. So I have turned into a virtual presenter right now, but I'm excited for when the stage comes back and we can actually see people in person. And I guess I can say I'm an author now, which is kind of crazy.
Did you ever think of putting this pen to paper to action? Like, you worked on this for 10 years, like close to over a decade. Like, was this always in the plan? Was this always in the works that you wanted to see this put together?
I always took journals and diary entries, and we did logbooks. I mean, it is sort of, I worked on it physically for 10 years, but the actual memories have been happening for a lifetime. So it was something that I always, had in the back of my head, but it took some time to get it right and to ensure that the stories were told in a way that was compelling and was honored the players that I played with and really showcased them to the rest of Canada.
You also hold is it an annual hockey camp in Winnipeg in the summertime?
I do. I run it out of Gateway Community Center.
And how was that this past summer, considering everything that was going on?
My 22nd year of running it, and the first year that I couldn't go. So I have 20 instructors there. Normally we have 120 girls, and with the COVID rules, we're down to 80. But my instructors did an amazing job. With the quarantining period of 14 days, we just couldn't make it work. So it was hard to run it from afar, but I got to talk live with the girls, which was exciting. And yeah, the instructors that I have are just so amazing, and they're the ones that really make it. So name you might know, Janelle Kohanchuk ran my on ice, and the girls, they get such joy from it. And when my instructors are joyful and having a good time with each other, then that's going to translate and make hockey great for the young girls as well.
How great is it to see young people smiling, playing a sport in general? Knowing what's going on in this world right now.
For sure. Those faces and seeing them just be able to play. I mean, that's ultimately, whether it's on the front street or it's them on the ice, wherever it is, just to see those smiling faces, you're so right, is just magical.
Sammy, did you ever play ball hockey, like road hockey, back in the day in St. Vital?
Free hockey on Tyrone Bay, yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Do you ever see that on your streets now?
So I do here on my side street. There's a bunch of kids that play. And it's funny though, when you go back to the rinks, I know in Winnipeg, like when I always go to Norberry every time I'm home, and they're not packed like they were. But you know, there's a lot more challenges on kids for their time now. You know, it's schoolwork is more demanding. Video games are more demanding. There's less time, I think, that kids have to do that. So if we can allow our children a little bit more time where they just get to play, I think it will do a world of difference for their mental health, especially coming out of this pandemic. Give them a place where they can just be themselves for a little bit.
When you address adults or kids in your keynote speeches, does the message change? I mean, the wording might change, but does the message change? And what type of message would you give to young athletes now pursuing their dreams or just pursuing the importance of play?
I think the message is the same. I try to talk about the roles, of course, and we talked a lot about that, but I also try to encourage everyone to look on the sidelines and see who maybe isn't participating, who is not involved in the conversation in a workplace and family, and who is not involved in the game, sitting on the sidelines of that street hockey game, who maybe wants to play, and to ask, to encourage people to be part of the team, to allow them to have the opportunities that you do, and to support others in that way. On the reverse of that, also to find role models, to find mentors, and to look up and to see who maybe is in the place that you want to be, and to not be afraid to ask for help. Because I think that those two ends of the spectrum are really part of the human experience. If you can be a role model and mentor to others while getting advice and wisdom from whether it's your elders or your peers, I think it can be so valuable and so important. So those are the messagings that I try to bring to people, and that whatever you're doing, to just simply be proud of what you're doing each and every day.
I'm going to ask an interesting question, and I'm going to try and stump you. What is the weirdest autograph signature you've had to deliver as a professional? Well,
I always say that I don't sign skin and I don't sign shoes, because they can come off, both those things, and I don't want parents getting mad. The strangest one, perhaps for half of your viewers, was that one of the National Hockey Championships was sponsored by Playtext. And so everybody got all these pads. And I was asked to sign a bunch of pads. So that was maybe the
weirdest
out of the population, perhaps the weirdest and strangest. And
yeah, I would say that's weird.
But they do stick on the wall really nicely. So
I mean, I'm just wondering how that would be, presented, or would you frame something like that? I don't know. Just put it on the wall. There it is.
There it is.
Now I'm going to try and stump you, because we've talked about several teammates I've been in contact with. Let's go back in the Wayback Machine to 2000, Mississauga. I wasn't privy on who you were playing. I think you were playing the Americans. You were down 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
And not told which player it was, but they're coming across, and they come across the grain, and you make this unbelievable kick pad save to turn the tide around. And Delaney Collins comes up to you, and all you're doing is smiling. You've made this great save, and you've been smiling all game. And from that point on, I've been told that save changed the direction of that game. Do you recall that save in that game?
I do recall it because I had to watch a lot of game tape for the book. So I do remember that moment. But what I remember most about Delaney was that she was always the fiercest Sammy supporter. So I loved her as a defenseman because she just would do absolutely anything in front of me to protect me. And just, the conversations that we had during the game were probably the funniest. As she yelled, she can't see, Sammy, you need to help me out here. I have no idea where the puck is, and vice versa. Delaney, can you stop it? Because I don't see it. And we would have full conversations as we were playing. So she, through the whole process, was one of my greatest friends, and her tenacity and her unbelievable resilience to come back after injury, and we marveled at. She perhaps got the raw steel of any Team Canada athlete, having narrowly missed 3 Olympic Games. But that doesn't mean she was any less a part of the team in my mind. And I try to sing her praises anytime I can.
The Manitoba bond on a Canadian team, how important was that, going to travel in international areas, knowing you had your fellow sisters from the same province with you?
Yeah, we often would be province against province when we were doing team building activities. And so we had Delaney, myself, and Jennifer. And then we also had Andre Brun, who was our media relations manager from Winnipeg. And so the 4 of us, we were on curling teams together. We did pottery together. We did random activities together. So we certainly tried to represent Manitoba the best that we possibly could. And it's funny how, across this country, wherever you go, if you meet somebody from Manitoba, you instantly want to find a connection. Of course, whenever I'm driving through, and I was driving to Killarney not too long ago, and I had to make a pit stop in Pilot Mound and take a picture with the mound, send it to Delaney to make her laugh.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got several pictures of me riding the fake buffalo by the stand. So
I thought it would be an actual hill. It's not even.
No, well, the hill, the history of that, I've talked about in other shows, is actually 3 miles away from where the city or the town actually is. And they had to move because they couldn't build the railway near the mound. It wasn't physically available there. So that's why they made the town move beside the railway.
Right.
I guess they did that back in the 1800s because I guess transportation was an essence thing.
Right.
No cars around, obviously, but Pilot Mound still attributes well to Delaney. Winnipeg and Manitoba truly admires and loves the fact that you are doing so well. You yourself, Sami Jo Small, Jennifer Botterill, all the great Manitobans that have worn the Maple Leaf. If there was one last message you had to give to somebody, what would it be? Whether it be about sport, life, you name it. The floor is yours.
I guess come from Manitoba. World success, world dominance, and that we are infiltrating the entire world. We're taking it over. No, what would be my last message would be, enjoy the book, first off. And Theo, I hope you enjoy the rest of the book and the stories that I tell. And that I really hope that readers find themselves in the book. That I pass no judgment within the book. I'm not telling them what to feel, but I want it to evoke some memories from their lives and hopefully motivate them to know that, despite even what we're going through now, that there's challenges and there's obstacles and there's going to be good days and bad days, and that's okay. To just, try your best each and every day, and not every day is going to be great, but all we can do is do our best for ourselves, but also for our communities at large. Excellent message. The role I played, is it out on stands right now? It is, yeah. You can actually walk into the store and you can actually physically get it, which is really cool. Now, is it the picture behind you, or is it the one that I have up in the corner? Which one is the cover? It's the behind me, yeah. So that one changed, okay. There's the book right there. There it is. Beautiful Canadian red, gold medal gold. Great color choices, I agree. Sami Jo Small, now author. Add that to the list. Isn't that weird? I know.
here on the ice. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the evening. Thank you again. I look forward to reading the rest of this book and
Thank
seeing the
you.
rest of
I
it.
really appreciate it.
Right on. Sami Jo Small here with us. The Role I Played is the book. Go check it out. Find it out on stands everywhere you can. I'm sure you can find it online too at the sellers. This has been On the Ice on Amateur Sports TV. Check us out Tuesday, Thursday nights, 7 o'clock. Thanks so much and have a great rest.